Hello, Flat Earth researchers, debaters and debunkers. It's probably about 4 a.m. I'm here looking up at the night sky, and this is one of the fundamental proofs that we're not on a globe orbiting the sun. I live on the equator, or pretty near to it, and obviously if I look straight up, then that would be the equivalent to looking straight out on a ball. And every night throughout the entire year, I see the same stars go overhead. This would be impossible. Totally impossible if we were on a ball that's orbiting the sun. And 6 months later, the night sky should be facing a completely opposite direction. Absolutely impossible. Yeah? It's like looking out of your front window and then your back window and seeing the same view. Doesn't happen. I see Venus every night just after sunset, and every morning before sunrise. I mean, again, if we're doing these crazy orbits around the sun, there should be a difference. So I know we can't use the sky as any kind of proof of the shape of the Earth, but this is talking about the direction we are supposed to be facing 6 months apart when we look into the night sky. Now, yes, there are, of course, some constellations or what have you that might or might not be visible, but remember, talking about the night sky that one should see, it should be totally different. So for the most part, see the same stars go overhead. So, always keep that fundamental aspect in mind, because people argue about this and that and come along with ridiculous misdirection and want to talk about little tiny aspects or interpretations or perceptions about physics and what have you. But at the end of the day, there's just no way. There's just no way that you should see the same night sky, night after night, throughout the entire year, if 6 months apart, we should be looking at a completely opposite direction. And if you want to then use the argument that everything's relative and everything's moving with us, then the idea that the entire sky is moving isn't such a fantastical idea after all, is it? These points of light moving about doesn't require as much effort as it does to move gazillions of tons of Earth, does it? But to look up and somehow imagine that this entire plane that we live on is somehow hurtling through infinite space and has been for billions of years, just going somewhere but nowhere very fast is absolutely ludicrous, totally insane. So putting us on a ball, falling, this is the thing, they have to assume that we and those stars out there are all falling through infinite space. Absolutely insane. So the thing is, the ball earth, the belief enslaves you, and it steals your mind. But you can have your mind back anytime you want. And when you realize this, you are free. You are free. Because nobody knows what those points of light are in the sky. But looking up like this certainly should not dictate where we are. No one's got a clue. But we are told otherwise since we are very young. That's what they are, like this, and this is where you are in the universe, and you're on a spinning rock. So our minds were stolen when they put the globe in our heads. And we laughed then because we knew it was a stupid idea. It went against all our senses. And we should trust our senses. Our senses have allowed us to survive up until now. Our senses have probably saved our lives a few times. I'm sure each of us has a situation or a story we can recount where our senses saved our lives. Our instincts told us to do something without thinking, without making mathematical equations. We just did something on impulse, or because our senses told us that we had to do something in an instant to survive. So we should, very much so, trust our senses. And that's what we've been taught not to do, not to trust your senses. And replace our instinctive and intrinsic knowledge with assumed knowledge. Handed to us by so-called experts who are no wiser than or knowledgeable than you or I. No one's been up there to the stars. No one's seen the entire Earth from space. So, what do they know? Nothing. So you can be your own authority. You can take back your own mind and regain your freedom of thought. I mean, people sometimes misunderstand that this globe Earth belief is somehow connected to science. It's not. That's the big mistake. And people think that flat Earth proponents not to take us back to the Stone Age, certainly not. In fact, our science and technology would be much more advanced than it is now if we weren't hung up and held back by this idea of everything working with gravity based on mass. If the scientific community was more in tune with the other energies going on here, frequencies, whatever, light, sound, just everything else that comprises the universe that is measurable, compared to the imaginary, immeasurable, non-existent so-called forces of gravity. It's absolutely insane. You have to wake up, and realize that these people who wanted to tell us what's going on up in the sky, up in the heavens, used the simplest, most fundamental, and most, to be honest, irrational way of thinking to make this connection between what the physics on Earth and the physics up of the Earth and its place in space. Just being able to measure the rate of acceleration for us over a very short distance at which a solid object will fall through the air has been used to say that is how the energy in this entire universe works. Something must be a mass, and it must be falling through the air or through the void in order to have this energy. Absolute nonsense, and presumptuous to assume that they have this, and it gives them this godlike status to be able to say, okay, that we've sussed out and we can make formulas about the way things fall through the air, and we can apply that to everything we see up in the sky, and everything's also falling through the sky, and that's how it all works. They get their godlike status for coming up with an idea or a theory and equations that are devoid of any real intelligence. Anyway, we're not on a spinning ball. It's so obvious. But that's why people fight it. They can't believe they were so stupid. They want it to be complicated. But in fact, they've given you a very simple lie, which appears to be complicated, but it's not. It's only complicated because you have to really complicate the issue to try and justify the very simplistic idea of gravity based on mass. It really is an idea for the monkey brain. I say, we've got scientific proof that we live on a spinning ball because we can drop a hammer through the air and we can measure that it takes 9.8 meters per second. We can measure the time it takes to drop through the air. And we can measure the time it takes for a star to go across the sky. So therefore we know how celestial orbital mechanics works. Oh dear. Wake up, people. Wake up, wake up, wake up. Come on. It's about time. About time to wake up. Use your noddles. Get your minds back. become free thinking individuals, and together we can then work as a collective of individuals to make this world a better place for our children. We can start we can start making real progress and evolving as people, as spiritual entities, whatever. Okay? Do it for yourself and do it for your kids. Free your mind from gravity. Thank you very much.